Guten Tag, es ist der Steyr aus Österreich. In other words, good day, it's the Steyr from Austria. This is it, the AUG. In its current form, it is the AUG A1 or the STG 77. This is one of my favorite variants because it is, quote unquote, the most classic, and we'll talk about some of the features that it has which distinguishes itself from some of the later models. So let's go around and talk about some of the functionality. Number one, it is a bullpup. This was being created in a time when bullpups were all the rage, and honestly, this thing still, to this day, looks like a space gun. Bullpups look super awesome. Obviously, one of the disadvantages is the fact that because the action and everything is moved backwards, is potentially right in your face. So this is notoriously difficult to fire for lefties if you have not switched it over, because while it does function perfectly for right-handed shooting in its current form, if you switch it over just in the field, this is going to be smacking those bullets right into your mouth, which is not ideal. Now, with a bolt change and by moving this cover for the ejection port, you can make it function well for lefties. You cannot move things over like the bolt handle here, so the rest of it remains. I guess that's really the only other difficulty, because even like the safety is kind of both accessible from your thumb and your forefinger for either handedness, and the magazine removal latch back here is ambidextrous as well. So it's still a great design, still awesome, but still a bullpup, so it has all of the disadvantages that carries. So we've got the HK style sort of slap feature where we can use this. So despite the fact that it does have lash halt hold open for that last round, it doesn't have a bolt release. That is something that they added on the A3, which we'll pick up a little bit later. So there's nothing here I can do to actually slap that and let the bolt close on its own. When we load it, we have to cock it again to get that to drop off. Now, why would it be like that if you can't just hit that button and get ready to go that round into battery? Well, the reason is because when you have the bolt close like this, there is obviously no opening. It's just shut there. You have to press this full magazine up against that bolt, and because of the way that the bolt head needs to strip off those rounds, it means that there is a little bit of distance that you need to push this in, where you're not only fighting the mechanism in here to keep the magazine seated in the rifle, you're also fighting that spring in here, which is under an enormous amount of tension because you have this magazine fully loaded. Let's talk about this for a moment. This is a proprietary magazine, 30 rounder, this waffle pattern. It should be translucent, but probably isn't, just because of the way that the game wanted to handle materials like that. So let's pop this guy in. Now, the reason that you'd have this little latch here so that you can hold it open is A, for disassembly and for accessing the firearm for malfunctions, and B, to allow yourself to load it more easily if that bolt is closed. So you can start it off like so, keep that guy open, pop this guy in so there's no bolt in the way. You can just slide this guy straight in, no problem, and then do a little bit of a slap there. Not as good because you've got this optic here which is not removable, that is attached directly to the receiver, so we'll just pretend like we can, because we have invisible hands, so to speak. So let's move this back. We've got the 1.5 times optic in there, so we should be able to do some damage at range, and I believe 30 is the farthest that we can go here. Now, if you look, we have some backup iron sights right on top as well. Very much reminiscent of what you'd find on a Glock. Whoops. So a little bit of an accident there, which I guess is a great time to tell you a little bit about how this thing operates and how you switch it over from single to full auto. You don't. There is only the safety selector. So right now, with it popping over to the left, there should be a red dot there, which tells you it's on fire. If you click it, goes over to the right, you'd see a white dot telling you that it's safe, and that is it. There's no secondary switch to put it into fully automatic, because how this works is actually by pulling the trigger different lengths. So if you pull the trigger, the first stage, it's just single shots. If you pull it over to the second stage, that is when you get full auto. So there are some pros and cons to that. The pros, there's no other switch to fiddle with. You don't have to check out like, oh wait, what is this in right now? I put it into fire, but I need to figure out if my second switch is on full auto or 3-round burst. So none of fussing around with that. Number two, it's just, they say, in the simplicity vein, you just can kind of keep that in your mind. You can just be right here and you're thinking like, okay, I know that first stage of the trigger is just a single shot, and if I need to, I can hold that down a little bit farther and go full auto. So that does make a lot of sense when you're in the drafting room. Now, where that doesn't make sense is when you're actually down in the trenches and trying to deftly manage that trigger, because anyone who's messed around with two-stage triggers, I've never personally fired anything with a trigger like this, so I can't say from experience, but when you are running around, when your life is on the line, you don't really have those minute controls in your fingers. It's just, you got to brute force it. So if you're down there, it's going to be very difficult for you to just squeeze off single rounds when you have to have the restraint to not hit that second stop. So you can very easily just be running around, hit the ground, and accidentally hold down the trigger and go, oh God, well, those shots are just garbage. So there are pros and cons. Again, something that I can't comment on directly because I haven't fired this in a fully automatic variant. I have fired the single fire version, and I'll bring in some comments about that later, but it's an interesting concept. It's not the first gun to use that and may not be the last, but it is a, let's call it, unique feature of these popular bullpups. So you can take another look through this optic here, and it has a unique reticle. Again, probably not unique because there are likely other rifles and optics that use that, but it has often been dubbed the donut of death because it is just a little circle in there. So it's a pretty cool little. So the more, like, let's call them bad ideas that you throw into something, it's like the more lovable it becomes. So nowadays you might say that the gold standard is like a chevron. I don't know. I love the, come on, buddy. What are we doing here? I love the chevron on the ACOGs. I think it's just going to come down to a preference thing. But the more odd things about a weapon like this front foregrip thingamajig, it's so unusual, and it does actually flip up vertically like so. So if this was the foregrip there, you would then pull it down and then swivel it up, and it would lie parallel to the barrel. And you want to kind of keep your fingers away because this isn't that thick and you don't have a shroud over the barrel, so you may wrap your fingers around and accidentally grab a hot barrel. So it's an option. I was worried that it would be really flimsy because if you look at the mechanism there, that's very much how it looks in real life. But in reality, it's pretty solid. Now, granted, the AUG I was firing probably had less than 1,000 rounds through it, so obviously everything's going to be nice and tight, but it didn't really concern me at the time. So I was going to start off in single fire, but you can see I have very little restraint. We're just going into full auto. So let's go ahead and throw on a suppressor just for fun before we turn it over. You know what? We'll save all the cool attachments for the A3. So other things about this, there are a couple different variants. There's the H-bar, which was supposed to be the LMG version. Now, there weren't a lot of changes. The only real difference was a large profile barrel, and that extra thickness helps prevent warping when you're firing it for long periods of time, because hot metal does have a tendency to not want to play nice. You can see on this one there are also some tiny little fins in there. Now, I've heard conflicting reports about whether or not that is actually helpful for cooling. As far as I know, it is not there. They are not there to function like the FAMAS's grooves, which would assist with a rifle-mounted grenade. So I guess they're for cooling, but I mean, they just don't appear to be significant enough to help, but what do I know? You'd have to run a study on that or something. So I think that's really the extent of what we can talk about for this guy. So let's pull out its younger brother, I guess, the A3. Now, this has an interesting little attachment there, kind of like deleting the front foregrip. Obviously, Picatinny rails, the way of the future. I probably should have grabbed a vertical foregrip to throw on this because, again, you run into the same issue of holding this horizontally, in that you can wrap your fingers around and hit that barrel. But number one, you can see when talking about barrels, much shorter. So this guy here, I think it's a 20-inch barrel, which is a little bit long nowadays. We kind of figured out that you don't need a barrel that long. Like the accuracy drop-off from the velocity drop-off in terms of barrel lengths mean that something around like a 14-16 for a 5.56 is a pretty good area to sit in for shortening up the weapon while not losing a lot of functionality and velocity from the muzzle. But we also have, instead of that, you know, fixed 1.5x on there, we have a Picatinny rail up top, so we can throw on whatever optics we like. In this case, I'm going to throw on this reflex. I'm going to throw it on pretty forward just to kind of use it like a scout scope. And then we have this goofy little button there. What could that possibly be for? Let's find out. Yes, that is the bolt catch. That is the bolt release. So just firing this up one-handed. Let's go ahead and throw another mag in. You can see that we now have the ability to drop the bolt with a button. So pretty huge. As far as I know, that is not reversible. So lefties are going to have to... I don't even know how a lefty would do that. Let's try and find out. Okay, so you're going to hold that with your left, throw this guy in here, and then what? I guess you're going all the way over the gun. Huh. Wow, that is not ideal. Nice. So one thing that I want to talk about that you will not be able to see here is that this gun is crazy plastic. Now, I've talked in the past about bullpup triggers and how they're pretty bad. The civilian version of this, which is semi-automatic that I fired, also has a not great trigger. It obviously doesn't have those 2 stages like this one does because the civilian version needs to be semi-automatic. But the fire control group inside here, now consisting of things like the sear, obviously not a full auto sear, but the hammer, everything in there, that whole pack was plastic, which is just kind of scary to see. Now, supposedly it holds up just fine. These guys went through some pretty extensive trials when the Australian military was trying to figure out whether or not they wanted to adopt these. Wait a second, Austria? What are we doing here? Okay, yes, it is Australia, which is also the main adopter of this for their military. Appears in many other countries for like smaller operations. I think the U.S. Border Patrol uses these as well. But Australia, quite fond of this rifle. So it is, you know, a cool one. It lost out, or it beat the M16. So that is an unusual fact. I don't know if it's unusual or not, but it's just a fact. Again, with the NATO adoption of the 5.56 round, it is, you know, everyone trying to figure out a weapons platform that they want to be able to produce in-house, but also is able to fire the NATO cartridges. For instance, Australia actually... Uh-oh, ran out of mags down here. Luckily, I have some on my chest. But Australia actually was having the design licensed to them so they can produce it in Australia. So that's something that you want in times of war so that you're able to produce your own weapons in case supply lines get cut off. So what else do we have here? We've got the suppressor. We can go ahead and thread this on. And we have a higher magnification optic. This is a 1 to 6x, and we'll mount that back a little bit farther. I don't know what the eye relief on this is. Looks pretty good there. What did I do with all my mags? Oh god, that's the one that I needed. Okay. Load this guy up. And look at that. That's pretty good. We need a vertical foregrip and a laser and a flashlight, and then I think we'd be good to go for some special operations missions. So I think we're on 1x here. Oh no, that was 3x. It shows what I know. So now we're on 3 or 4. I was not paying attention. Let's clear off this target. So the HTC Vive actually has a 2-stage trigger, which is like not giving me any good excuses for not using this correctly. So let's bring this on back and see how I did. How do I get this back? There we go. Show me how I have done, Mr. Target. Did I clear that off? Not so... Whoa! I keep forgetting about physics now being added to the game. Not so great. Looks like we've got a lot down below. I don't know how many are on target there, but let's go ahead and just reset it, and we'll do another set. Okay. Let's grab a few of these guys, throw them on the table. Whoa, round in the chamber. Wow, unsafe over here, aren't we? All right, let's see. Can we keep those all kind of in the gray center ring? Get back here. Whew, let's make sure this guy's clear. Looks like it is. Oh, fair dinkum. On your bike, look at that. A few stubbies short of a 6-pack there. So sorry, Austrian, not Australian. So we've got, is that 30? That can't possibly be 30. I don't know how to interpret this anymore. So shot 15. Oh no, those are each individual shot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 Let's call that one touching the inside. So 16 on the outside. Wow, that is under 50%. Not ideal. Let's try it. Maybe we can go the OG, the STG 77. See if we can do a little bit better there. Ooh, that 1.5 isn't doing me any favors. What have we done? There we go. We got to put it into fire mode. Trying to make things simpler with the two-stage trigger, and I still can't keep track. Oh, that felt good. The donut of death was just honed in on that bullseye. Let's see. Let's make sure everything's out of the way for this guy to come. Woo! Look at that! Look at that! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the outside. So plus maths equals a better result. Awesome. So that's the one we're sticking with. The STG 77, the AUG A1, and its amigo, the A3. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something, and hope you overall just had a good time. If so, please hit that like button as well as subscribe for future videos. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.